Hey guys, this is Nicole, one of your legal writing TAs. I will be doing the first session of our TA talks for the semester of spring 2022. And in this video, I will be doing a desktop explanation on how to cite a case. I will try to keep it as brief as possible. So, essentially, I have a finished product of a case citation here. If you want to take a quick screenshot, this is a good overview of not only the final product, but the rules that we will actually be using. So the final product, we have Adrian v. Town of Oyster Bay. Keep in mind, this case has nothing to do with any of your spring 2022 assignments. I chose this because it is in our very own New York Supreme Court Appellate Division. We're not learning it because it's substantively helpful for our spring 2022 assignments. We're learning it because we're learning how to cite a case. So just keep that in mind. Do not put this case in your appellate brief for spring 2022. So the first thing that you do when you're trying to cite a case is you're trying to identify the rules and the charts and the pages of all those things where they can be found. We're looking for the rules that we're going to be using. So here, if you're looking to cite a case, the very first rule that you want to look at is B10. For our people that use print versions of the Bluebook, that can be found on page 11. And for those who use the online version, I will be showing you in just a moment. This is how you actually do it. You go to the Bluebook, sign in, and then you type in B10 or you type in full citation. There's lots of ways to look at it on the online version. But that's the first rule that we're using, B10. This, I'm going to say 1.A, the second rule, but not on its own, is Rule 10 in the white pages. And I say that, I'm saying that it's not its own thing here because we're not actually using the white pages for substantive rules when we're writing an appellate brief. Because when we're writing an appellate brief, and for the purposes of this entire legal writing class, anything that you're submitting to a court, you're using the blue pages. I like to remember this by saying I'm writing a brief, B for brief, so I'm using the blue pages, B for blue pages. B brief, B blue pages. Anything that you're writing that's submitted to a court, you're using the blue pages, as opposed to if you're writing a law review article or a journal article or anything like that that's not actually submitted to a court, more secondary materials, that's when you're using the white pages. But here, I love the way that Rule 10 shows a case citation. So you are allowed to use the white pages for further explanation of the blue pages when you're doing something that requires the blue pages, but you cannot use it solely for substantive rules. So because again, we're writing a brief, we're in the blue pages, and the only reason I'm using the white pages is for an additional explanation. In this situation, I love the visual that Rule 10 gives us. We just have to be mindful that there are slightly different rules in the white pages than there are in the blue pages. So as long as we understand that and proceed with caution, we're good. And then second, the chart that we're actually using here is T1.3, which represents all state jurisdictions. Here we are in New York State Court, the New York Appellate Division, Supreme Court. So we are in a New York State Court, so we would be using T1.3, which is essentially a cheat sheet, and I will show you exactly how to utilize this chart to its maximum potential. It will tell you the answers, I promise. The hardest part is finding which court we're in, and then finding that in the chart. But everything else, if you find the court that we're in and you find it on the chart, you're good. It tells you the answers. And just a side note, if we were in a federal jurisdiction rather than a state jurisdiction, we would not be using T1.3. We would be using T1.1, which is on page 227 of the Bluebook. So if it would be T1.1 if we were in the federal jurisdiction, which is on page 227. But being that we are not in a federal jurisdiction, we're going to be using the state. So I'm actually going to delete this as to not confuse people. But again, T1.3 is the one we're using because we're in a state jurisdiction, and it's on page 272 for New York's portion. Okay, so without further ado, let's say you're researching cases, you find this case as part of your research journal, you stumble upon Adrian v. Town of Oyster Bay, and you love it. You love what it stands for. You love the way that it tells you all of the case, all of the, procedural history. The opinion is beautifully written. You want to cite to it. So the first thing that we're going to do, and probably the easiest part, is to just copy the name of the case. So Adrian v. Town of Oyster Bay. Why I knew to do that was if you're looking at B10, which is the full citation rule in the Blue Pages, they give you a few examples of what a full case citation will look like. These are actually also adding parentheticals, which is, we could do that in another video if requested, but for now we're not actually going into parentheticals, we're just going into the full case citation. So okay, yeah, so it's just this portion up to 1962. And then this is another example where it goes up to this portion, Washington Court of Appeals 2007. So ignore the parentheses. This is an example of a full case citation. The reason why I like Rule 10, look at the difference. Look how beautiful that is. It tells you exactly what everything is, which is something that B10 does not do. So again, as long as you understand that we are using the Blue Pages as rule of law, because we're doing a brief or something that's submitted to the court, you can use Rule 10 and just be mindful that there are slightly different rules, one of which being that in the white pages you don't italicize or underline cases, but in the Blue Pages you do. So again, we're using the Blue Pages for rule of law, so as long as you understand you do have to underline or italicize the case, then to your heart's content, use this chart because it's so much more beautiful. So I did exactly that. I italicized the case name. Make sure you leave the comma alone. Leave that comma alone. Do not italicize or underline that comma. It is not something that is done. If you go back to the Blue Pages just to take a look at that comma. It's fresh, it's clear, there's no underline, and there's no italicized version of it. It's exactly how it is. So leave it alone. So now that you have the name of the case and the untouched comma, we have to figure out how we got this. So this was something that I personally struggled with because I couldn't understand why this was the right answer when Lexis told me to cite to this reporter. So I'm going to explain why this is the right reporter to cite to and not the one that's bolded in Lexis. And in Westlaw, it looks very similar. It gives you the same information, and it also lists A.D.2D as the first reporter in the list of reporters, similar to Lexis. But the right reporter is this one. So how did we get that? So this is where that chart comes in real handy. So again, the chart that we're looking at is on page 272 for everybody with a print version. And how I found it on the online version is I just typed in the word New York. Brought me right to it. So this is the chart that we want. We're in New York's chart within T1.3, which is States and District of Columbia. And I know that we are in the Supreme Court of New York Appellate Division. This is where this becomes incredibly important. Figure out what court you're in. If you know your court, then you find your court in this list. So again, we are in the Supreme Court of New York Appellate Division. First I went to New York, which is the state. And then now I'm going through the chart to find the Supreme Court of New York Appellate Division. That's the court that we're in. So let's go down the list. Are we in the Court of Appeals? No. Are we in the Court for the Correction of Errors? No. Are we in the Court of Chancery? No. Are we in, oh, there it is, Supreme Court Appellate Division. So this is the money. This is the gold. This is going to tell you the rest of the answers in how to cite a case. I promise you. So back to that question, why this is the right answer, the 692 NYS.2D. When Lexis told me that this was the reporter, it's because this chart lists this reporter as Plan A, so to speak. It is the first one in the list of Bluebook's preference. Bluebook wants you to cite to this reporter if it's available. So ignore what Lexis tells you to do here. The reporter here, this is not the one that Bluebook wants you to cite to. The Bluebook wants you to cite to this one. So even though it's listed as number 2 in the reporters, pay attention to what the Bluebook wants you to do. This is the Bluebook's preference. So that answers that question. That's why this is right. So if I know that I'm looking for something to do with West's New York supplement, I'm either looking for edition 1, edition 2, which is why it says 2D, or edition 3, NYS. I'm looking for that. Let's go back to Lexis. Is it there? Yep, it's there. It's just as number 2. So ignore the fact that it's number 2 and copy this verbatim, or the way that it reads, right into your citation. 692 NYS 2D 140, exactly with all the periods, with all the spaces, exactly the way that it's written. So that answers everything up to what we have highlighted. We have the case name, the untouched comma, we have the volume of the reporter, and then the first page that the case appears on. But Lexis will tell you that. So it says it right there. And then you have 145, which I'm not actually citing to a quote or a point or anything like that, but I just put that as an example. Let's say the quote that I was using was on page 145 of the case. That's the reason why you're putting it there. That's our pin cite. So again, on rule 10, beautiful chart here, specific page referred to, 60. It's the same thing here. It's the specific page that we're referring to. It actually makes it much easier for the reader because the reader doesn't have to read the entire case to find your quote. They can just look to page 145. So now we have everything highlighted up to this point. Now, what are we putting in the parentheses? So the same way that this chart told us the answer on what reporter to cite to, it will tell us the answer on what to put in the parentheses. I have it highlighted right here. Supreme Court Appellate Division. As long as you find this, just copy exactly what it has in the parentheses next to the court and put it right in the citation. New York Aptiv. New York Aptiv. I didn't come up with this. I'm not that smart. New York Appellate Division. It tells you exactly what to put in that parentheses. It's right there for you. And imagine we were in Court of Chancery. That's what you would put. If we were in Court for the Correction of Errors, we would put NY. And if we were in Court of Appeals, we would also put NY. That's just a coincidence. But let's say we were in the Court of Appeals, you wouldn't be putting NY Aptiv because that's not the court. It gives you the abbreviation of the court right in the chart. So you put it right in, you add the year because the rules here tell you to put the date of the decision. It also tells you that in the blue pages. Remember, that's really the one that we're using for the substantive rules. And then see Washington Court of Appeals, that's the court that it's identifying, and then the date of the decision, or the year of the decision. So that's it. There you go. You have the case name in italics, untouched comma, volume, reporter, first page of case, pin cite, the court that we're in, and then the year of the decision. Again, I really like the way that Rule 10 lays this out for you because it identifies everything here, and it just looks really pretty. As long as you understand that Meritor Savbank v. Vinson would have been italicized or underlined had we been in the blue pages, then you're fine to use this chart. Just understand that when you're looking at the white pages, it's only for further clarification or further information. Do not solely use the white pages if you're writing a brief or anything that's submitted to a court. So I hope that I clarified some common questions with regard to citing of full cases. If anybody has any questions, please let either Jamie or I know. The general thing with citing a case is that this is probably the most common thing that you'll ever cite to, especially in things that you're submitting to courts, because think about why. Courts love to see binding authority. They like to even see persuasive authority in their own court. So if we were in the New York Supreme Court Appellate Division, I'm sure they would love to see a case in their own court. Their friends or maybe even them decided it. So that's why you're citing to a case rather than a secondary material. It does happen, but it's less likely that you'll see a secondary material like a law review article or journal article or something like that in an appellate brief. It can be done, but it's just less often done. So the reason why I say that is because being that this is such a common thing, know it. Learn it now. Don't let your law school career go by without knowing how to properly cite a case, because then you'll go into practice and it will become an issue in the future. So with all of that said, ask us if you have questions. Go to our site with resources and study materials and all these videos and everything. It's greentahelp.com, greentahelp.com. bluebook.com, and let us know if you want another desktop video on a different topic. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day or night, and I will see you all soon, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.